helmet consultation is scheduled. You've been told it's the only real option to fix your baby's flat spot. 6 to 12 months of helmet wear, 23 hours a day, $4,000 to $6,000, and usually not covered by insurance. But before you commit to reshaping your baby's skull from the outside, has anyone asked why the flat spot formed in the first place? Now, I'm Dr. John Caruso, and in the next 15 minutes or so, I'm going to show you what the helmet industry doesn't want you to know. That flat spot isn't just about positioning or even tight muscles. It's a visible alarm bell that your baby's nervous system is stuck, and helmets do absolutely nothing to fix that internally. So let me tell you about Millie. Millie's parents watched that flat spot develop slowly at first and then rapidly. They tried repositioning, they tried tummy time, they tried every sleep hack and carrier adjustment on the internet. But here's what they noticed that their pediatrician dismissed. Millie also had restricted movement in her neck. She couldn't turn her head easily in both directions. Her jaw seemed tight, and she was becoming increasingly uncomfortable, crying more, sleeping worse, struggling during feeds. And when they finally got to that helmet consultation, the specialist measured Millie's head, showed them the severity of the asymmetry, and said, "This is what we do. 6 months, $5,000, problem solved." But Millie's mom asked the question that most parents don't dare or think to ask. Will the helmet help her neck movement? Will it help her jaw alignment? Will it address why she's so uncomfortable? And the answer was no. The helmet reshapes the skull, period. It does nothing for function. And that's when they found our office. And here's what happened. Millie only needed to wear that helmet for 6 to 8 weeks, shocking the doctors, shocking the helmet people, because once we addressed the nervous system dysfunction causing the limited movement, her skull started reshaping naturally, the way it was designed to. Her pediatrician couldn't explain it. We can, and that's what this video is about. So plagiocephaly means flat head. It's the flattening of one side or the back of a baby's skull. Now, there's studies that show 20 to 25% of babies develop some degree of it. And the standard explanation is simple. Babies sleep on their backs, and the repeated pressure on one spot flattens the soft, moldable skull bones. Now, that seems logical, right? Except here's the problem with that explanation. Most babies sleep on their backs, but most babies don't develop plagiocephaly. So what's the difference about the babies who do? Now, the real cause is stress and subluxation. The misalignment and the dysfunction, specifically within the upper cervical spine or the upper neck and the cranial bones, that then creates neurological interference and muscular tension. So let me break this down. When a baby goes through birth trauma, and yes, even normal vaginal births can be traumatic when you consider the amount of force involved, their delicate skull bones and the upper neck bones can shift out of position. This is amplified dramatically with interventions. Now, forceps deliveries apply 60 to 100 pounds of pulling force to a baby's head. Vacuum extractions create suction pressure that literally reshapes our skull bones. And C-sections, especially emergency ones, involve rapid pulling and twisting motions, and they don't get the pressures that are necessary for cranial molding. Now, that physical stress creates three big problems. The first is the misalignment. The bones aren't sitting where they should. The cranial bones or the cranial plates, they're overlapping incorrectly. And the atlas, or the top bone of the neck, shifts out of its normal position. The second big problem is fixation. Those bones get stuck. They can't move through their normal range of motion. Your baby's head and their neck can't rotate freely. The cranial bones can't expand and flex the way that they're designed to during growth. The third problem, and the most important, is the neurological interference. Now, this is the big one. When these bones are misaligned and stuck, they create constant stress signals to the nervous system. Your baby's body thinks it's still in danger, and it stays locked in fight or flight mode, or what we call dysautonomia. And when a baby's nervous system is stuck in survival mode, their muscles stay tight, specifically one that's called the SCM, or the sternocleidomastoid. It's a big neck muscle, and it stays contracted on one side. So your baby can't turn their head freely. They favor one direction. And because they can't move out of that position, pressure builds on one part of the skull, day after day, week after week. That's plagiocephaly. The flat spot is the result. Now, stress and subluxation is the cause. Now, here's where this gets really serious and why I'm so passionate about getting this information to parents. Any asymmetry in the skull creates asymmetry in the brain. Now, let me say that again. When your baby's skull is growing asymmetrically, their brain is developing asymmetrically. Now, our skull isn't just a protective shell, it does act as that, but it's a growth guide for the brain. As the brain grows, which happens rapidly within the first 2 years of life, it shapes itself to fit the available space. When one side of the skull is flattened and restricted, the brain tissue on that side doesn't have the same room to expand and to develop. You get uneven brain growth structurally. But it goes deeper than that. Asymmetry in the skull changes how sensory input is received and processed. When cranial bones are misaligned, the cranial nerves that pass through them get compressed or irritated. Now, these nerves carry critical information from your baby's eyes, their ears, their face, their mouth, their tongue, directly to the brain and back. When that input's distorted or reduced or impacted on one side, the brain doesn't develop balanced neural pathways. One hemisphere or one side gets more input, more stimulation, more development, and the other side lags behind. And here's what the research shows. Plagiocephaly is directly linked to neurodevelopmental delays, to motor delays, and to cognitive impact. There was a 2016 study published in Pediatrics that followed children with plagiocephaly into their toddler years and found that they were more significantly likely to struggle with things like gross motor skills, like rolling and sitting, crawling and walking, their fine motor skills, grasping and manipulating objects, their hand-eye coordination. But even bigger, their language development, both receptive and expressive language, their cognitive processing, so problem solving, their spatial awareness, and their higher levels of learning. There was another study that children with untreated moderate to severe plagiocephaly were 2 to 3 times more likely to need early intervention services by age 3. This isn't cosmetic. This is your child's brain development. And the helmet industry will never tell you this because helmets don't address it. They reshape the outside of the skull, but they do nothing to restore the balanced input, the nerve function, or the symmetrical brain development that your child desperately needs. Now let's talk about these helmets. A helmet works by applying gentle, constant pressure to the prominent parts of the skull while leaving room for the flat areas to round out as the baby grows. It's basically a mold, and yes, it can change skull shape, but here's what it can't do. It can't release the muscle tension that's causing the limited movement. It cannot restore normal motion to those stuck cranial bones. It can't calm the stressed nervous system that's keeping your baby in fight or flight mode. It can't restore balanced cranial nerve function, and it can't fix the asymmetrical brain development already happening. And it can't improve function, only appearance. It's like remodeling a house that's sitting on a cracked foundation. You can make the exterior look great, but the structural problem is still there, and it's going to cause issues in every other system. And those other systems are things like the eustachian tube, which the drainage leads to, or lack thereof, leads to chronic ear infections. The lymphatic flow, or lack thereof, leading to frequent colds and respiratory issues. Their jaw alignment, leading to feeding difficulties and future dental problems or airway issues. Their vestibular function, leading to balance and coordination issues. Visual processing challenges, because eye alignment is affected by cranial asymmetry. Their gross motor development, leading to delayed milestones like rolling, sitting, crawling, and walking. Challenges with sensory processing. So, sensory sensitivities and integration challenges. Their cognitive development, learning delays, focus issues, processing challenges. We see kids at 5, 6, 7+ years old that had helmet therapy as babies. Their heads look round, but they still have chronic ear infections. They have difficulties with balance and coordination. There's retained primitive reflexes, sensory processing disorder, focus and attention challenges, and learning and academic difficulties within school because the foundation was never fixed, because the brain asymmetry was never addressed. Now, at Haven Family Chiropractic, we don't guess. We measure. We use the technology called the insight neurological scans. Now, these scans show us exactly where your baby's nervous system is stuck in stress mode. The first is the neurothermal. Now, this scan measures temperature differences all along the spine. Why does that matter? Because when stress and subluxation creates nerve interference, it affects blood flow and creates inflammation. That shows up as heat. For plagiocephaly cases, we almost always see a hot spot, a big red significant pattern right at the upper neck. That's where the stress is locked. The second test that we do is heart rate variability. Now, this measures nervous system balance. Is your baby in rest and digest mode or fight or flight mode? Kids with plagiocephaly almost universally show low HRV scores, meaning that their nervous system is stuck in stress, unable to switch into calm and healing mode. These scans are non-invasive. They take 5 to 10 minutes tops, and they give us a roadmap. But here's where completely different from general chiropractors and miles ahead of helmet therapy. Now, we use advanced training in craniopathy. Now, this is the specific gentle adjustments of the cranial bones to be able to restore proper motion and alignment. Most people don't realize this, but your baby's skull isn't one solid bone. It's 22 separate bones connected by sutures, flexible joints that are designed to move. They expand and contract with every breath. They shift and mold during growth, but when birth trauma happens, these cranial bones get jammed together or overlap incorrectly. They stop moving the way that they should. And when cranial bones can't move, critical things happen. First, our skull can't grow symmetrically. It's going to grow where there's room, meaning it keeps flattening where it's stuck. Secondly, cranial nerves pass through and around these bones and get compressed. The vagus nerve, the master regulator of our digestion, our immune function, and our calm, runs right through the base of the skull. And when it's compressed, you get reflux, constipation, poor sleep, and a baby that cannot regulate. Lastly, the brain doesn't get balanced input for development. Remember, asymmetry in the skull creates asymmetry in the brain. And when we restore normal cranial bone motion, we restore the brain's ability to receive balanced sensory input from both sides. The more clinical one here is that cerebral spinal fluid flow gets restricted. This fluid bathes the brain and spinal cord, delivering nutrients and removing waste. Now, when cranial motion is restricted, this flow gets compromised, which directly impacts the brain health and development. Craniopathy or chiropractic cranial adjusting, it's incredibly gentle about the pressure that you'd use to test a tomato for its ripeness. We're not cracking or popping anything. We're giving those stuck bones permission to move again. And when they start moving again, everything changes. The shape for sure, but more importantly, the function, the nerve signals, the muscle balance, the brain development. Our adjustments, oftentimes for these cases, focus on three big areas. The upper neck, top two bones specifically. We release the stress and subluxation at the top of the neck that's creating the muscle tension and the nerve interference. We adjust the cranial bones to gently mobilize those skull plates, especially the occipital bone, the parietals, our temporal, and the sphenoid, to be able to restore normal motion and symmetry. This is where the craniopathy training is critical because we're not just adjusting the spine, we're restoring the cranial rhythm, that subtle expansion and contraction that allows the brain to grow evenly. And lastly, it's a neurological reset. We use neurotonal adjustments that help shift the nervous system out of fight or flight and into rest and digest mode. Because when the nervous system calms, the body can finally heal and develop the way it's designed to. Parents tell us that their babies sleep harder on adjustment days. They're calmer. They move differently. They're looser, freer, and more comfortable within their bodies. It's not a placebo. There's a nervous system that finally feels safe enough to relax, and a brain that's finally getting the balance input that it needs to develop properly. So let's go back to Millie's story for a second. Because when Millie's parents brought her in, her insight scans showed exactly what we expected. Massive stress at the upper neck, major asymmetry in her muscle firing, and a nervous system locked in fight or flight. We showed her parents the scans. We explained the care plan, and then we started adjusting. Twice a week initially. And then once things stabilized, we dropped her down to once a week. And within 2 weeks, Millie was turning her head more easily in both directions. Her parents said that she seemed less irritable. There was more content. By week 4, that flat spot was visibly improving. But more importantly, she was hitting milestones. She started rolling both ways, pushing up better in her tummy time, sleeping longer stretches. And at 8 weeks, the pediatrician couldn't even believe it. Millie only needed the helmet for that short time because her skull was reshaping naturally now that that function was restored. But here's what her parents were most excited about. Millie was actually having consistent bowel movements for the first time. She wasn't spitting up constantly, and she was happy, like genuinely happy and comfortable in her body. And that's what happens when you fix the foundation. The helmet gave her skull a little external support while her body did the real work. But without chiropractic care restoring the function first, she would have been in that helmet for 6 to 12 months. And all of those other issues, digestion, sleep, development, would have persisted. And more critically, her brain would have continued developing asymmetrically for months. Those are the months that you can't get back. Neural pathways that get wired incorrectly in infancy become harder and harder to rewire as kids get older. And here's what keeps me up at night. I see kids 7, 8, 9 years old whose parents did everything right. Tummy time, helmet therapy, physical therapy, but nothing addressed the subluxation. Nothing restored cranial bone motion. Nobody fixed the brain asymmetry. And now those kids are struggling with chronic ear infections leading to tubes and antibiotics. Sensory processing disorder making school a nightmare. Fine motor delays affecting handwriting and coordination. Visual processing issues. They can see fine, but the brain struggles to process what they're seeing. Balance and coordination challenges, focus and attention issues that look like ADHD, anxiety, and emotional regulation challenges, learning delays, reading difficulties, math struggles, processing speed issues. And when we scan them, we still find that original pattern from birth. The subluxation that started at birth is still there, still creating interference, still keeping their nervous system in stress mode because the foundation was never fixed, because the brain asymmetry was locked in during those critical first 2 years. Your pediatrician won't tell you this. The helmet specialist won't tell you this. But I'm telling you, if you address the shape and ignore the function, ignore the nerve interference, the cranial motion restriction, the asymmetrical brain development, you're setting your child up for years of compensatory struggles. Now, chiropractic care is the foundation, but there are things that you can do at home to support your baby's progress. You can vary the positions constantly. You can do baby wearing, tummy time, sideline, upright holds. You can alternate their feeding sides, even if you're bottle feeding. This gives both sides of the brain equal sensory input. You can limit the container time, like car seats, bouncers, swings. Those should be minimized outside of necessity. There's gentle play that encourages turning, so putting toys on their non-preferred side to engage them from different angles. There's the cross-body movement activities to be able to help your baby reach across their body to activate both brain hemispheres. But here's the key. These strategies work 10 times better once the nervous system is out of stress mode and cranial bones are moving freely. Before that, they're fighting against a guarded, locked up system. So here's where you're at. You can choose that helmet only path. You'll spend 4 to 6 grand. Your baby will wear a hard shell 23 hours a day for 6 to 12 months. Their head shape might improve cosmetically, but the dysfunction underneath, that nerve interference, the muscle tension, the stuck nervous system, the asymmetrical brain development will still be there. And you'll likely deal with the downstream consequences for years. Or you can choose the function first path, address that root cause, release the subluxation, restoring movement to the cranial bones, calming the nervous system, to be able to create balance input to both brain hemispheres, and let your baby's body do what it's designed to do: grow, develop, and reshape naturally. Now, many of our families do a combination. Chiropractic care is the foundation with a shorter helmet time for cosmetic refinement if needed, just like Millie's family did. But the key is function first, brain development first, always. Because here's the truth: you can fix the cosmetics later. You can't get back the critical brain development window of the very first 2 years of life. Now, if your baby has plagiocephaly, you have options. Real options that address root causes, not just the symptoms. Options that protect your baby's brain development, not just their appearance. And here's the next step for you parents. Call our office. Use the link in the description to schedule a consultation here at Haven Family Chiropractic, right here in Katy, Texas. We'll do the complete neurological exam, the insight scans, the cranial assessments to find out exactly where your baby's nervous system is stuck and what's creating that limited movement. And then we'll sit down with you at a report of findings visit and show you your baby's personalized care plan, specific, measurable, and designed to restore function and support healthy brain development. Now, many parents see changes within the first few visits, real visible changes, better movement, happier baby, and yes, head shape improvement too. But more importantly, you'll know you're giving your child's brain the balanced input that it needs to develop properly. You don't have to choose between aesthetics and function. You can have both, but you have to start with the foundation and you have to protect that developing brain. The link is in the description, and let's get your baby unstuck and thriving. I'll see you in the office soon.